Hey guys, this is another Loyota review. This time we're looking over the Season 14 Bruiser items. This is going to be a little bit different from my usual because typically I'm on the PvE in-game to show the true values, but you can get the true values from SpiderAxe's Twitter as well, and since PvE is down, that's what I'm going to do. I'd say the safest thing to start out with is Sheen. Sheen is going from 700 gold to 1,000 gold, which is not great. Um, you really mostly only cared about the proc. I'm gonna assume that because it's 1,000 gold, it's getting the addition of um, ability haste. So it'll be a 250 start for ability haste, and I'm pretty sure that's right as well. Because yeah, if you look at here, so it's gonna have ability haste, um, which is like fine because there's not a ton of ability haste like built into most classes now, but you really mostly just want it for the proc damage. So like getting the proc damage and then just some haste on the side feels kind of bad. And it actually turns it into like a C. And there's only a few champions that even build this in the first place, right? The most obvious one being Gangplank. Um, there's a few that were going, well, it's gonna be a little different now because we had Sunder and Triforce, and everyone was just building Sunder as like Camille, Jax, whatever, because you got mostly because you got the proc damage plus the heal being the big thing. Um, but now we just have Triforce, and we have something that's a little bit different. And maybe they'll still go Triforce for that, like because they spell weave so much they'll take the damage, or maybe they'll just say screw it and we're not going to go this anymore because the item's not so great. But regardless, it's like a C tier, not a great rush item, a first 1,000 gold spent compared to the before. We're gonna skip out on Triforce and not go straight into that yet. But next would be the Hydra and Titanic. So the main difference with Hydra, which is like right here. So build path, it's good. Tons of long swords, lots of damage. It's 70 AD. You know, I'm pretty sure it's mostly the same. Like you get 5 more base AD with this one. Of course, when you do the stacks, you will end up having 15 less AD. So it's not as strong of a scaling item. It costs a little bit less. You get a little bit less ability haste, but the fact that you get ability haste is always a great thing. Um, the passive is now persistent. Before there was actually a little bit of a timer for when you do the proc, but also you could proc it with abilities, which is why you saw certain champions actually building it, even if it wasn't the best for them per se. Um, and you of course have an animation cancel, which is great. Uh, it's a lot of AD, it's life steal, it's ability haste, which like these are like the two big things that all bruisers won. There's a reason why the mythics were created the way they were, Gore Drinker and Stride Breaker, right? Because they offered HP, AD, and ability haste. And all these things are like both like you're a melee user, so it helps you keep you alive, helps you do damage, and helps you use your spells more, which in return helps you do more damage and stay alive. So those are like the big things to look out for. Obviously it doesn't have HP, but it has some life steal. It's a pretty good item. Do I imagine this being the kind of item that you would still have mainline bruisers build first outside some very select few like Riven and like Camille? I'm not 100% sure. Like, I'm gonna probably put it in an A tier. I don't think it's broken by any means, but it's a pretty good item. Like just on its own, it's a pretty good item, and I can definitely imagine like people just going this again at the like second and third like tier. Um, there are some champs that literally skipped doing this second uh like for instance Jax like never built this item because like he was either just picking up more attack speed or just going further into bruiser slash tank. Camille sometimes built it, not always, especially because like you kind of want more defensive options, but it's interesting, right? And there's Titanic. Where is it? Sorry. Titanic. It has this like new build path thing. It's like fine, not, I mean, it's mostly fine. It's like it's not like the worst build path. Um, Specifically, what I say, so it has 20 more base AD compared to before. And this is accounting for the fact that, if you did the passive, also, I just realized I should probably put down plus 50, plus 50 HP. I didn't include that. Um, that's accounting for, the 500 health that you had prior, plus the 2% bonus 80 you get based on your bonus health. Um, so it's plus 20. So you get 20 more AD from building this versus before. It takes 1250 bonus HP to equalize the AD difference. Now, if you're a bruiser, that's a lot. Like most of the time, I mean, you will probably build like three. And so by the time you hit three items, like, yeah, it will equalize it. But the fact that you can build this one or two and it'll just be better, and then you can build other things that are not necessarily HP outside of this, and it still has a shit ton of HP, right? So if your first item is HP, this item's HP, you're naturally going to want to get resistances because your effective health is going to be terrible with three just only HP items. Um, this is quite interesting. There's not really much change outside of that. Like the proc damage is the same, and then you just have the cleave, right? Like the active, and that is quite nice. I mean, like I remember playing Renekton and having Titanic and just being able to animation cancel my W, and even just having it like in random outspurts that can help me get my rage back to 50 all of a sudden is incredible. So this is a rather good item. Um, it's like I almost feel like these items are both in the A tier. As you remember, there was definitely champions like rushing like Titanic, and there was also some differences on when you go one or the other. And you can imagine picks like Kled. Kled will definitely rush this item now that like Stridebreaker is like, semi nerfed and everything. Um, and he also sometimes went this first, anyways. There's like also the rare like Urgot, I guess, would still go it, and he actually might benefit from the fact that Mythics got like removed. So it's pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty interesting. But I feel like the Hydra items will once again be a pretty dominating force in the meta. The next thing I want to hit on, let's see, should I stick with HP items or should I go and take care of the rest first? Let's take care of the rest first. So let's do attack speed items. So we have Wit's End. I've showed Wit's End before in another video. It's just these aren't stats like a Bruiser wants at all. It's just like a bad item because, yeah, sure you get MR, but I'll just go Maw if that's the case because like most of the time I'm just gonna take the fat amount of AD that Maw has. Also, I don't think I put Maw in this list. Oh man, I did not. Let's see if I can add it real quick. I think it's. Can I find it under ADC? I can. Nice. Okay. Cool. No, so this, man, I really do not want to do this right now, but does he actually include it? Because if he doesn't, it's gonna be a little sad because I know I did a video on Maw. I know they changed it up a bit, just a little bit. Yeah, they changed it up a little bit, but it's okay. I'm not gonna try to like digress too much, or else this is gonna like ruin the video. But it's just a bad item for the most part for any bruiser. Like you're just not gonna go this item. If you can go Maw, you're gonna most definitely go Maw as your MR item. Especially because now like there's a lot more HP item. Like honestly, I might even put it at an A tier because it is definitely your preference. By and large, it is your preference. Bork, it's like, how do I say this? So it doesn't have the siphon. It's still the same stats. It has a slow proc initially. It's like, oh, because there's more like their opposition has a lot more like base HP items to build. Like you'll probably build two base HP items, and that was kind of the same before, anyways. Like you'd build Gore Drinker, Black Cleaver kind of thing. Sunderer plus Black Cleaver, Sunderer plus whatever. But there's not as much of a race in terms of Vamp. So like the champions that went Sunderer could technically match some of the Vamp. Not anymore. There's not really like outside of Hydra, there's not really an actual like ideal item to rush into, which makes this very interesting. Um, because if you remember, there was definitely a meta back then that like you would trade like Borks, like rushing Bork, like Irelia, Renekton, like these kinds of picks. I don't know if it will go that way, which is why I'm putting it at B, but it makes me pretty interested. And maybe I'll revisit this a little bit later in the video. In terms of pen items, so we have Grudge. Grudge, it's like, yeah, it scales off pen, which is like not as much, like you don't get as much benefit from that. It does have lethality, which is interesting because there's certain champions that actually would pick up lethality, especially when you could go prowlers. And of course, there's no more longer you have prowlers, and the whole point of prowlers in some ways was just the fact that you had a high amount of like lethality slash AD to just kind of one shot someone. So this might be a little bit of like a, how would I say it? A little bit of like kind of like a useless item in some ways. But I actually could see a world where some champs pick this up. The slow is based on when they get lower, which means it's worse for champions like Aatrox. But still, it's like, I don't know, the lethality thrown into it seems very interesting, and I think I'll put it at situational actually instead of just C, because it definitely is a situational item for very specific champions, like Aatrox. So it'll still be there. It's probably actually better compared to before, because the fact that it has, yeah, you don't get the full 30% like pen, but like honestly, the base lethality will take you further compared to an 80 having it. Um, then there's this one. I know I've been over this one before. Where is it? Oh baby, Terminus. Okay, so we have Terminus. You guys probably remember this one. Uh, so it builds out of like a BF, which is not great. It's not exactly like the best item to be holding on to as a Bruiser champ. Like it doesn't do the most. So like the build path, like I could definitely put this in like build path seems pretty shit for Bruisers. I mean, like this is like for sure like a thing. But you know, when we think about Wit's End, like Wit's End was bad, right? No AD. But this has AD, this has attack speed, this has on hit, like the things that Wits kind of like needed, and it has also MR armor. And then uniquely, you could have penetration item, which you almost typically never build because you always take Black Cleaver. Of course, Black Cleaver is 24%, this is 30%. And this also is attacks. So it's probably going to fall into a situation. I can't imagine this item being a staple, but when you think of champs like Renekton, so if he uses his W, auto W, empowered W, you get 4 procs already, so that's 24% pen, 12 armor MR. You have Tryndamere, who's like, okay, I mean, I don't like overcommit on crit by going this item now. Yeah, the 80 armor is like kind of whatever, but the fact that I get this kind of penetration seems like not half bad. Though I don't know if he would actually do this over Giant Slayer. That's the only thing. Or even just like this item in a way. Maybe though, because it has attack speed, which is like pretty incredible. But it's like, I don't know. It's very interesting. That's all I'll say. It's very interesting. I'm not gonna like commit to slamming it into these tiers yet, like this item, but it's definitely there. And there might be a pick I'm not thinking of that could really benefit from it. And then we have Triforce. Triforce, it's like, here. Where do we have it? So we have Triforce, you know, plus 10 AD, but minus 10 AH. You know, that kind of sucks, losing ability haste for this item. Like, yeah, he gets like the movement speed, you have the proc, but I don't know. It's the fact that Sheen was nerfed and it doesn't give much ability haste kind of feels sort of sad, and it's still pretty expensive. Like I really need to consider if this is like worth it for like Camille and other champs to build over other items. Because again, like I said, the proc is definitely great, and you're like maybe that's why I need to put it at like a C tier and maybe B tier because it just because of that still. Um, it just doesn't really feel that incredible. Just feels kind of okay. Um, let's get into the thick of it. Let's get into Eclipse. So Eclipse is going to be pretty interesting. So where do we got this? Man, I think I have to click on these. No, I don't. This is the only problem with using this off Spider Axe. It's like I just can't. Oh, here we go. Sorry. So Eclipse is 2,800 gold. It's pretty cheap. I mean, it's literally 300 gold cheaper. It has 10 more AD, but it doesn't have lethality anymore. But again, it hits the sweet spot, and it's what you guys remember. The 3 main stats you want are HP, AD, and AH, right? This has 2 of those. It's a decent amount of AH. It's a ton of attack damage for a very reasonable price. They did nerf the proc damage, so it's not max HP. It's your bonus AD. And then the shield is 40 base lower, which is also not exactly the best feeling, but of course it's cheaper. But the fact that it is cheap and it has so much AD is very enticing. Because if you get a lead, like I can imagine certain Bruiser champs picking this item up. Like if I'm comparing Bork to this, Bork has 40 AD, this has 70, this has 30 over. And how much does Bork cost? Bork cost, I can find it, 3,200. It costs 400 more gold. So you can complete this item and be back with this over a Bork user. And most of the time, to beat a Bork user, you have to burst them anyways. So that's really interesting. I mean, the fact that I can build a pickaxe and a longsword, I can go into a hammer like this. The build path is really simple, really easy. If it's an S tier, it makes me inclined that you should build it first or aim to build it first. And of course, I don't know if I would say that it's so strong that you're going to do this over any other option always, but it's rather good. It's rather good. So for now, I'm going to put an S. And then there's Death's Dance. Death's Dance, what did they change about this item? I think there was, I think I just got a slight nerf. Here we go. It should be like right here. So here it is. So Death's Dance. So it's 100 more gold, but it has 5 less, what did I say? 5 less armor. I think it's like, oh, the horrors of trying to find it. Like I said, this, oh, here we go. Sorry. So it comes through this build path now, which is a little bit different. Again, like they kind of changed it so you have a lot of these like simple components. So all the items are like a little bit more straightforward on like capitalizing on. It's like fine. It's like a fine item. Again, it has ability haste, which is nice. But the way I see it is because they're making it 100 gold more, they're kind of trying to push this away from being like your stereotypical second item, because as you know, your first item is typically HP, right? Like it is typically an HP item, and then you could pick up Death's Dance like second or something like that. Sometimes like third. Because it's so expensive, like I said, I think they're trying to push it further back, but it still mostly does what it did before. So it's still like a rather good item that you're probably most of the time going to aim to pick up, because it just adds AD. It has armor, and it's you're going to almost always take this over GA anyways. So it kind of just slots in here like naturally. Like your main defensive items are going to be very high tiered. Next up we have Black Cleaver. So I'm pretty sure, no, Black Cleaver did change a little bit. Okay, I got this. Man, this would be so much faster if I didn't have to do it this way, but it's okay. No, that is too far back. It is this. Okay. So it has 5 more AD. It has 15 less ability haste, which sucks. Let me just quote on that. 15 less ability haste. And it costs 100 gold less, right? But overall, the net loss is you losing 300 gold of efficiency. It's still over 100% gold efficient, but like the fact you lost so much for just 580, I don't give a shit. Like the ability haste was what made this item so much better, but there's a reason kind of why they did that. And it's because they're tweaking that ability haste into Shojin even more versus Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver is supposed to be more known as the armage reduction, right? And if I compare this to Triforce, this gives more HP than Triforce. This gives a bit more ability haste than Triforce. It gives you armor reduction. It gives you, like, it does not give you the proc, but it has basically all the other similar things, and it's basically the other counterpart to Triforce outside of one other item. And it's still, like, this is still a fine item. It has a lot of stats that you want. It's still a very fine item. But it's not. It really sucks the fact that I lost 15 ability haste. If it had 30, I can tell you right now, at 3,100 gold for 30 ability haste, this and this, you would rush this item. Like, it would be S tier. And I might move it up to A still. Like, I'm still deciding, like, as I figure this out. Next up, we have Stride Breaker. I think it's this one. So, with Stride Breaker, where's this sucker? Here we go. So it's 10 less AD, 20 less ability haste. In other words, they removed the ability haste from the item. A little bit more HP, and it costs like a little bit less, 3,100 gold, right? So the slow is worse, and the active is longer. Like the cooldown, it's 20 seconds versus 15. It's just a worse item. Like the slow, like when I've used it in the game in some PB matches, I felt like the slow was whatever. The bonus movement speed is very interesting because obviously if you process against multiple champs, like if you're Garen, you run into 2-3 champs, same with Darius, you're going to get a huge MS burst to kind of chase down anyone even more. But at that point, if you're like on top of them with the slow, you're probably going to catch them anyway. So it doesn't probably matter as much. Yeah, you get like, the bonus movement speed for dealing physical damage. Like they've been throwing this temper thing into like a bunch of items, right? But it's just, I don't know. Like Renekton's probably never going to build this item. And I'm going to say he's probably never going to build this item because there's better options than this. It kind of just falls flat. Like, I almost want to put it in D tier. I'm just going to put it here for now, but it's very underwhelming. Sterix, I didn't see any information on Sterix. I'm going to assume it's practically the same because it didn't have ability haste on it anyway, so I don't know why you would change the AD and everything, which make this item still just a reasonable pickup, right? I could even put this as situational even, but just generally, it's just like a decent item, right? Next up, we should do Hull Breaker. So with Hull Breaker, where is it? Beauty. Here we go. So it has a shittier build path. I hate this item. Like, I hate Longsword into just plus 20 AD, 4% MS. Like, it's very whatever stats. And, like, just like I said, building this in general just feels bad. So it's kind of like under the same... What item had a really bad build path? It wasn't Eclipse. Was it Terminus? Oh, yeah, it was Terminus. So Terminus was the other item that had a really bad build path. It was like Recurve Bow and BF Sword. So the build path is, it's shit. But the main difference with this is you get 5 more AD, you get 50% more HP, you lose the regen. You have now it's a little weird. Like, so now you can build up stacks up to 5, and then you get a proc damage, right? And it's based on your basic attacks, which means that again, champions like Renekton and whatever can build up stacks really quick and then get that proc. And it's definitely, more geared towards champions who will auto attack you a lot. So Aatrox, this is kind of useless compared to, oh man, what was the item that was like based on attacks? It was, I think Eclipse said it was based on attacks, compared to, yeah, I mean, whatever this one is. Um, yeah. So it gives like armor and MR to cannons, which is interesting, just because it lets you kind of hit longer on the turrets. And so it's now definitely being more refined as that like tower taking like item compared to, oh, I am like very honed into 1v1 dueling, uh compared to before. It's not half bad because it's 3k for 65 AD, and it's like one of those items you would definitely build later on if it really meant towards it, like going into this kind of situation. But the fact that you don't get any armor and MR means that this item no longer is a like rush worthy item. Like it's, you won't have enough attack speed or anything like that, which makes this item situational. It's not like you're gonna slam it before. It's just a situational item. Spear Shojin is S tier. um, it's S tier for a very specific reason, and I think you're gonna start realizing kind of. It's this one here. I think you're gonna start realizing why, and that's mostly because so with Spear Shojin, you know, there's a big loss of ability haste in a lot of items, and if you opt to go, like, let's say you go, how would I say it? If you go like Bork first or things like that, you really do need to make up that ability haste. And it could be the same with some other items and whatever. Uh, but like you need to find like those items to fit in. Of course, if Black, like I said, if Black Cleaver had 30 ability haste, that would literally be the S tier item. Like you would literally want to build that. The fact that you can build just this item and get 35 ability haste, decent HP. I mean, the HP loss is like it's a really considerable, like 300 HP loss. Um, it is still over 100% gold efficient, but like I said, that's kind of a rough hit. And then instead of getting like MS based on your missing health, which was fine, it was good in some ways, but it wasn't like the end all be all. The fact that you get increased spell damage that stacks up, that's pretty sick. Um, like there's like a lot of bruisers are not like heavily like auto based. A lot of them are just like, yeah, I'll weave in autos between my spells. But like those spell CDs, I definitely play around still, right? Riven plays around her spell CDs. Renekton plays around spell CDs. Aatrox especially. Even like Darius in some ways. Garen, kind of. But this like added thing is actually a benefit. And so this makes this item incredibly good. Like even in the case that you're building, like you're playing Camille, if you hit, like, let's say you do EW and then you're landing your Q and then your Q2 is doing 9% increased damage, at least I think that's how this is going to work. That's very interesting. And again, you can weave in more Qs, which you want to do. But of course, the grand scheme of things is I haven't mathed out if, like the Triforce procs, are going to overcome. Like it probably definitely will be way better in the end, I guess, the Triforce procs compared to just like having a 9% increase into your hits. But like, will it be an overkill? Will it be, is the consistent damage more worthwhile? Like it's just a lot to consider. And in the end, like if you go this anyways, right? Like if you're going Triforce and you're going this anyways, it's just even more of a benefit. So it makes me inclined to put this here at an S tier. And this also makes me almost more inclined to raise this one up, maybe. Again, just because it has such good stats, that maybe people will find that, well, even though this has more ability haste built into it, it has like the increased damage built into it, then maybe I still want to have this so I can tech into other things. That is yet to be decided yet, though, because I think the Bruiser items are a little, I feel like they're a little mixed up. Like a lot of these feel semi-situational now compared to before, where it was just kind of like doing the same thing over and over again. So let's finish this out though, because this has definitely been a longer video than intended. Uh, what am I missing here? Right. Okay. So experimental hexplate. It's this item here. So you get 30 haste for your ultimate, which is good, but like not. How do I say it? It's good, but it's not like a necessity for some bruisers in the end. But it's still good. And now you get a burst of damage like with attack speed and MS. It is this one here. Build path is like fine. So this is the one that gives you 35% attack speed and 15% bonus movement speed. And the 80 you get is decent. Of course, you're missing ability haste, but you're getting two of these main stats, right? And again, something that's kind of like that. And 15% movement speed is insane, to say the least. Also, this makes me realize I should definitely add this here. I should really add that here. But the fact that it gives you that kind of rush, again, I don't think attack speed is like that. It's not incredible on Aatrox. The movement speed is really nice. Again, I think it's mostly the movement speed that kind of like entices me with this item. And the fact that, like, if you use ulti as Camille, like obviously your ulti is extremely strong and you use it and you get a 35% attack speed bonus on that. If you're like Tryndamere and you activate this, though typically you don't really care for this stat, but this is pretty interesting. Like 55% attack speed is pretty damn interesting with this movement speed bonus. It's like almost like a B tier item. I almost want to say B or C tier, or it might even just be situational because again, there's cases where I can imagine like it's not like a be all end all be all kind of like bruiser item. Part of me is like, so like really just wants to put it here. It's probably like realistically, it's probably like around here for all the the 80 items that you can build. It's probably around here. Just because even though it can be really good, again, you really like Black Cleaver, you really like these items. It's kind of hard to think of like the full like scheme where it fits in that it's gonna just like you're gonna take other items over that. Um, and then we have oh shit, where is it? Oh, here we go. So build path is not bad. This is the Sundered Sky. Again, it's called Sundered because it's supposed to be like Sunderer. It gives you a heal and it gives you a fat crit when you hit someone, right? Now, what I didn't see initially was the fact that it has a 6-second cooldown. That is kind of amazing. Like, if you do 300 damage and you have a crit, it's 450 damage, right? A lot of bruisers will end up having like 300 plus AD, so it's in a reasonable like plus 100 plus 150 proc. Then you get the heal on top of it, and it really benefits you to hit multiple champions in a fight. Unlike it's kind of like Heartsteel in a way, where like you kind of want to proc it on multiple champions as well. And then for a strictly dueling case, you'll probably get this proc twice. Probably within that time frame, which makes it also semi interesting. And if your missing health is like large enough, so let's just do like a quick calculation, right? Say you had 2,000 missing health, right? 160. That is not half bad. And then 110% of your base AD, right? So if your base AD is, I don't know. Let's just look up Camille real quick, okay? So we have Camille at level, let's just say 13, right? 109, right? 109 plus what do I have? 160. 200 plus heal is more than Sunderer, and if you're in a fight and you can hit like 2 or 3 people in the middle of the fight to get this proc, that's over. Obviously, keep in mind that's with me saying that you're down 2000 HP, which is not always going to be the case. Like it'd be a lot more calmer for me to say like 1000 missing health, right? And then you do 0.08, right? It's 80, right? But still, like this is a much better item than that tank item that I described before, which kind of I'm not gonna lie, it has all the stats you want. It has 80 HP and ability haste, all 3 stats you want, and it's a 6-second cooldown. It's really interesting. I don't know. It's really interesting because it definitely like pushes you to be in a team fight. Like yeah, for dueling it's like good, but like not as good as Triforce, for instance. But in a team fight, like if you can get around and hit a couple people in the fight to keep vamping that way, it doesn't require you to have like Sunder procs. It doesn't require you to have like a spell active to actually do it. You just do it as is. It's pretty interesting. I don't know. I literally find this item to be considerably good. And of course, this is situational based on the champion you're playing, basically Darius Garen. But because that's slow resist and everything, it's a considerable item. Now, if I were to look over this and say, should I change anything? I don't think these are OP, but they're very good. I think this item is considerably good for team fights. And naturally, these are just like great items for defensive cases. I do think this is at the bottom, and these are definitely situational. I don't think you're just going to build Hull Breaker like you did before because it doesn't give you like self stats. And this item, even though I like the idea of it, probably in practice is not that great. Outside of a few picks. And then Triforce. The thing is, I feel like probably champs will still build it just because the fact that it has attack speed. And this leaves really only it only leaves you 3 attack speed options. And like I said, maybe you're playing Jax and you're just going to build Bork first anyways and say, screw this, screw the Triforce. I'm going to build Bork. And then I'm going to go into like this, into this, or like, you know what I mean? Like I probably will keep this at a C tier. Maybe it belongs to be in the B tier. Maybe this belongs to be up one more, depending. Because like if you're playing against a tank, I can imagine you just going Black Cleaver first, right? But it doesn't mean it's OP. It just means like specifically that. But into another Bruiser, if they build Eclipse and I build a Black Cleaver, I probably will lose. I think I'll keep it here for now. This will be my final list. This is definitely the longest video I've done just because I had to, you know, use Spider Axe versus like the client. And I added a few extra ones that I forgot, but we'll stick with this. So thanks for watching, guys, and peace out.